movie did I just watch? Okay, what the fuck was dubstep doing in this movie? Do you think I had a good time tonight, ORAC? Look at my hair. Does that look like the hair of somebody who had a good time? Don't fucking giggle. Here's the short answer. No! The Great Gatsby can be summed up in 7 words. Rich white people having problems, the movie. Alright, ORAC, what do you want to know?
No.
Cat.
No, I am not reviewing this movie.
Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, we've reviewed worse things than this.
Hey, I sat through Iron Man 3 for crying out loud.
What makes this any different?
Because A, I hated the book, and B, this movie was boring as shit. Plus, this is like the 3rd or 4th bad movie we've seen in a row. I mean, I'm getting sick of it.
Oh, come on, don't be such a baby.
We already sat through it, so we might as well just talk about it. Besides, Star Trek just came out, and the sooner we're done with this, the sooner we get to the good stuff.
Oh, well, in that case, I say we get to the good stuff now and screw everything else. Because I am telling you right now, we are not reviewing this movie, and that is fine.
Cat.
Oh!
I'm not saying she's a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke... Don't you be lipping on me, little bug. I know who your father is. Remember that. Another thing that really pissed me off, ORAC, Rhapsody in Blue by Gershwin is the single piece of music that can calm me down no matter what. No matter what I'm going through, no matter what kind of panic I'm having, no matter what other fucked up whoop-dee-doodle shit is going on, that piece of music always grounds me, and it always brings me back down to earth. I understand it's 2013, but this is a movie about the frickin' jazz age. Jazz, not acid jazz. It's more anachronistic sparkle fuck. It's shiny, it's glitzy, it's meant to get your attention. That is what I, Dodger of Zion, will call the out-of-date, out-of-place elements in this film. Between the dubstep, the hip-hop, the Bollywood, and anything else, especially Rhapsody in Blue, which came out after the movie's time. But it has no place in the jazz age. Therefore, anachronistic sparklefuck. The movie would be a bit less anachronistic if it had one of these in it.
Why are you guys here? Where are we? Why is everything black and white?
Oh my god. We've been transported back to the 1920s!
Oh my god! Ugh. Hey, at least there's booze.
Can't complain about that.
Which is ironic considering they banned booze.
I was for Prohibition. That's why I'm drinking just a Coke.
Lame. Wait, why are you dressed different than us?
Oh, isn't it obvious?
What's obvious?
I represent the soundtrack of the Great Gatsby movie.
Ah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I guess since we're stuck here in the 1920s, somehow, we may as well talk about The Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
You know, it's funny. I went to see this movie just to see how Baz Luhrmann would over-glorify the story over something that's really not that glorified, in my opinion. I remember reading this book when I was in high school, and I mean, the setting-wise, I understand. I mean, being all 1920s and all, but the story, I just wasn't a big fan of it. But I know there have been different movie adaptations over the years, and this is the most recent one. I mean, overall, from a visual standpoint, it looks phenomenal. It really does, and it's a lot more interesting than really reading the book. It's one of those cases where I kind of like the movie better than the book, but that's not saying much.
Yeah, it's a very pretty movie, and it's exactly what I thought it would be. Because, I mean, again, this is the same guy that did Moulin Rouge. Obviously, the sets and the cinematography is going to be just phenomenal, and it was. Like, it looked like a big, giant, glitzy party. Like, every scene you went to, and even, like, the parts where they went to, like, Dirty Jersey, it was still kind of big and flashy.
Were they in Jersey?
No.
It was Jersey, come on. All full of black smoke, and people are yelling at each other.
Well, that section of Long Island can confuse a lot of people with modern-day New Jersey, but
I thought they came in on the Queensboro Bridge, so that's on the New York side.
I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, it looked like Jersey to me.
And yeah, I actually had not read the book. I was technically supposed to in college, but I never read it.
I read it, and I hate it. Oh my god, like, it's bad enough reading, being forced to read books that you would normally have no interest in, but, like, I've read books in high school that I was legitimately surprised to have liked, like, you know, In Cold Blood or The Scarlet Letter, but The Great Gatsby, oh my god, I could not stand that book. It was just so goddamn boring. I was like, I tried so hard to pay attention. I'd read like the same page like 6 times before I even realized that I had made no progress. And I was like skipping through and I'm like, okay, I gotta do a test on this. Let me just look for keywords. Okay, this. And nothing interesting happens. Great.
And I can understand why, because I actually started rereading The Great Gatsby. I was trying to do this in preparation to go see this movie. And I can see why you would get lost with this, you know, having to reread it, because the language that F. Scott Fitzgerald uses in this book is very dense. It kind of reminds me a little bit of British literature, because a lot of British literature uses a lot of descriptions, and there is a lot of descriptions in Great Gatsby, in the novel. And what I liked about the movie version is that it took all those descriptions and it just flat out did what it had to do. It didn't overstay its welcome, and that's what I kind of felt like when rereading it, is that there are parts of it where it's like, where I'm reading it, like especially when Nick, first gets drunk, when Nick Carraway gets drunk for the first time, it's like, all right, I get it. Like, I get it, he's drunk, he's at this party, but it just kind of keeps going on and on and on about it. In the movie version, when they do that scene, it's like, all right, I can get this. I mean, yeah, it's all wild and crazy, but it felt like it didn't overstay its welcome, and that's what I kind of liked about it. A lot of the scenes here don't really overstay its welcome until you get to the third act, but
agreed.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, so, like I said, the movie started out great. Like, it was a big spectacle. You were introduced to all the characters properly. Some of them even get a big, flashy, like, premiere. Like, the way they introduced Gatsby. Like, you do not see him except for his ring. Like, whenever he's walking throughout the party. And then finally, when Nick sees him for the first time, he turns around and he's like, hello, old sport. And there's, like, fireworks in the background.
There's fireworks in the background. He's holding up this champagne glass. The martini glass. It's like, hey, looking at you. Like he's, like, the most interesting man in the world.
And then you see, like, the look on Nick's face. He's like, and I just suddenly hearing in my head, like, I have just met you. And
and that's the thing, you mentioning Nick Carraway, because I like what they did with Nick Carraway, with the Nick Carraway character in this movie, because, I mean, in the book is just more. He was just observing stuff, and more of the setting just became more of the character. But here in the novel, they actually make Nick Carraway a little bit more. He's a little bit more involved. He's a little bit more directly involved with the story. Like, he's kind of like serves, you know, with Gatsby. He's more interactive with Gatsby a little bit more. He's also. I hate to say this, and I'm probably going to be doing this throughout this portion of the vlog, but I feel like with the Great Gatsby, they're trying to almost redo Moulin Rouge in a lot of certain aspects.
Agreed.
With Nick Carraway, with regards to Nick Carraway, they took his character and they kind of made him almost a little bit like Christian. Because Christian is like the poor writer, like he always dreamed of writing his novel, and you have Nick Carraway, who just happens to be dreaming of writing that novel, but he didn't want to because he wanted to go into the bond business and get rich, like everybody else, you know, get rich quick. So it's
but he kind of was forced by his doctor to. Yeah,
it's like writing soothes you. So just here, I happen to have a typewriter,
which kind of brings us to. This director seems to have a fetish, but you notice it in Moulin Rouge, and you notice it here in Great Gatsby, the typewriter fetish. Oh my!
But that doesn't really tie in more, not until like the second half of the movie when you start seeing like the text like on the screen.
Yeah, that's one thing that they did different from Moulin Rouge, because whereas the typewriting started at the very beginning and went throughout the film, like he started out just telling it as like telling it to a shrink, just saying that, oh yeah, I remember back in the day where things were simple and I was happy and da-da-da.
Where the booze was cheap.
And the women cheaper. and then it's not until later on when he gets so emotionally overwhelmed with what he's recollecting that the guy says, well, why don't you try writing it? And he's like, okay. But yeah, it is like almost exactly like Moulin Rouge, except that the love story is happening to somebody else.
Yeah, really.
There's also some other similarities, like how the movie just does not know when to shut up. I mean, they keep talking and talking over each other, and it's just a lot of sound and a lot of, there's like no real time of quiet, and when it does get quiet, it gets awkward.
Yeah,
it just seems to stop and just doesn't know how to fill the quiet space.
Kind of like with Moulin Rouge, where
exactly
like in the very beginning of both movies, in Moulin Rouge, there's this grand party, everybody's dancing, there's music. Same thing with the Great Gatsby, everybody's having a party, they're dancing, there's music.
It's not just like the music; it's also the dialogue.
Yeah,
it's like everything just keeps coming at you.
But I will say this though: the dialogue in that movie was taken straight out of the book.
Oh yeah, no, I believe that. I believe that. It's just like I said, it just sort of comes too quick and doesn't. It's just like everybody's talking over everybody else, and it keeps talking, keeps making noise, just.
That was
nothing
annoying.
Stops. And it's, like I said, it's like Moulin Rouge too, where they just they just don't know how to pace the talking.
But the editing, I felt, even in the beginning, wasn't really quick paced as it was in the beginning of Moulin Rouge was. Moulin Rouge was like something was cut, like they couldn't stay on to one shot for 5 seconds. Here it does stay on longer. And then a little bit longer, and I think the narration also works better. And
I think the big reason they did that is because they wanted it to try to convert it to 3D, because more money. Yeah. So hence why they really wanted to show off the lavish scenery and stuff, including the party.
Oh, and they did, and I mean,
it looks great.
It's just sad that that's the only reason, because I'm pretty sure if it wasn't for the 3D aspect, it probably would have been as quick paced as Moulin Rouge. I'm glad though. I love the party scene, just because Gatsby lives in this palace by the sea, and it's just him and a bunch of servants. But when he throws parties, everybody's there. The entire city of New York just crowds in there, and he goes freaking all out. You see, like, all these feather dancers. You see all, like, these servants going around with hors d'oeuvres. You see a guy playing music on the organ, which sounds like rap music somehow. and like, you see all these fireworks and all these scarf dancers and confetti thrown everywhere. And it's awesome. Like, I wish we had parties like that nowadays instead of just, like, in rap videos. And that's what it felt like, too. It felt like a rap video.
I think I went to a cast party like that when I was in high school. But,
but yeah, speaking of rap music.
Entirely inappropriate.
But yeah, speaking of rap music.
Entirely inappropriate for what we were watching.
It was out of place. It didn't need to be in there.
Especially when, like, freaking Nick is mentioning, you know, all the sights and sounds of the 20s. He's talking about the music, and then you get all this rap music and hip-hop music. It's like you're completely defeating what he's saying.
It's like it's a mesh between the music of the time, the 1920s music, with hip-hop. And that's basically what most of the soundtrack was. And I felt it was just... They could have just kept the 1920s music and just be perfectly fine with it. You know, this movie would have benefited if it had an original score. Yeah, there are some instrumental moments here and there, but this movie could have been better if it was just an entire, like, a full original score. The reason why with the soundtrack with Moulin Rouge I gave it a pass was because even though some people were like, oh, modern music in, like, 1899, I'm just like... But at the same time, it's a musical and it fits with the context of the story. That's why I gave that a pass, because it's a musical and it does work. Here, it just feels out of place. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just odd.
I think the big problem is that, like, it probably would have been better if the characters were singing it and they put their own spin on it the way the people in Moulin Rouge did. Because that's the thing that, like, that made the songs great, was that they were songs you're familiar with, but they were done in a different way. So it was
almost an entirely original score, so to speak.
Or soundtrack, whatever you want to call it. But I totally agree with you on that, but then again, at the same time, I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate. It would have been almost like Baz Luhrmann trying to redo Moulin Rouge, but only by calling it Great Gatsby. You run the risk of that.
I know, like, they would never make Great Gatsby into a musical. Like, the fans of that would probably throw a shit fit or something. But
if they did it right, I mean, I'd be shocked.
Right, but if that's the case, you know, then just go with the appropriate music. I mean, look at Old Brother, Where Art Thou? Like, they used, like, you know, old-time blues and stuff throughout the soundtrack, and they even had their own original songs in it that the characters actually sing, like that one big song. And it fit, and it was wonderful, and, like, it swept the Academy Awards, so why didn't this film do that? Instead, they just copped out for, like, oh, let's do something people, like, are familiar with, but let's make it edgy. And it's just, it didn't
Let's make it something for the young people, you know, like something, because I think what it is they realize that this movie, that teenagers are probably going to see this because, you know, they're in high school and they're required to read this.
And there's pretty colors.
So they figured, you know, this would be the type of people that would probably see this movie. The same people who, when we were in high school, saw Romeo and Juliet and Moulin Rouge. Yeah.
Plus anyway. I think they were, like, really trying to turn into a rap video, in my opinion. Especially with that one scene that came right the fuck out of nowhere. It's just...
What, the one in the speakeasy? No.
It's the one where they're driving over the bridge into the city, and all of a sudden there's, like, this car full of like, black people who are wearing all this
right bling. On the bridge,
and then there's, like, an ice full of tub with all these, like, bottles of champagne. I'm like, what the fuck? I mean... Really? I mean, I know,
No, but the real kicker is the line that leads into that Nick says, and he says something along the lines of, I looked over to the car next to me, and I was very confused. That's basically my reaction to this entire movie.
What the hell was that?
Exactly. That's what I was with Great Gatsby. I'm like, I am totally confused by this.
Like, I can forgive them, you know, putting alcohol, like, inside, you know, alcohol being given, like, at the party, at people's, like, houses and apartments, and, of course, in the speakeasies. It's appropriate for the time. It's prohibition. But for a car full of black people, no less. So obviously they're going to get pulled over in this time period, and
they've got nothing covering the car.
Yeah, and there's like 10 of them, none of them wearing seatbelts, and just like 10 bottles of champagne wide open. It's like you're begging to get pulled over.
It's there just for, because it's 2013, but 1920, but it makes it retro, and it's there to make...
Stupid.
I know. I was confused. I agree. I was with Nick Carraway on that one. I was confused. It totally didn't need to be in there. Then again, there was a lot of things that didn't need to be in there.
Agreed.
It's still... overall the movie I think still gives a much... Visually from looking at it, it's still much easier to see things. It pans it out a lot better than how the book describes it. But getting into the characters themselves... I'm not a too big fan of the characters themselves, but thinking it over now, it's been a while since we've seen this in theaters. I will say that the characters, they still pissed me off, and I guess that's a good thing because I never liked the characters to begin with. DiCaprio was pretty good as Gatsby, in my opinion.
Although his accent was very odd.
And I think I could explain that, because he did the movie Blood Diamonds a few years ago, where he had this really butchered, British accent, and it kind of almost sounds like he was trying to do the same thing here, because, he went to Oxford. He was over there in Britain for a little while. And I guess he might have picked up that accent somehow.
But,
it didn't feel natural.
And that's that was the problem with Blood Diamonds, was that it was butchered, it was forced, and even though it was a light accent, it's...
But the thing is, he only used it whenever he would say his catchphrase, like "old sport."
Yeah, really.
But it's not like he had the accent while he was in the presence of rich people in order to put on a facade, and then he just switched over to his normal Southern accent or whatever real accent he had when he was in private company. He would only use the accent when he was saying that line, and then he would attempt to do it when speaking to certain people, but it didn't fit. He sounded like himself.
Yeah.
And that takes you out of it almost, because we're watching Leo play Leo with an occasional British, Brooklyn, Southern accent.
It almost kind of reminded me of him trying to play Jack Dawson again from Titanic, especially when he's trying to get Daisy back in his life. He's trying to go after this woman. He's trying to win her, sweep her off her feet. And that's what it kind of only a little bit though. It wasn't it wasn't entirely, but it kind of reminded me a little bit like that. But then when you get to the scene when you get to the one scene which I thought was totally out of character, where he had volumes of love letters that he still kept
that was
over the years.
I turn over.
Jack Dawson got creepy.
I turn over. I'm like, he's the world's richest stalker.
Yes, oh my God, Gatsby is out of his fucking mind when it comes to Daisy. The guy, he falls in love with her, and he never talks about anyone else. We assume this is his first love, so of course he's immediately all over her. But then he gets sent off to the war, and after he's done, he assumes she's gonna wait for him. So he's like, I'm not coming back until I'm rich, and I can give you all these nice things and stuff. But then during the time she gets married. And then after that, he buys this big, expensive place that is directly across the river from her house. He throws these big, elaborate parties in hopes that she will come to them. And then he sets up her cousin with a job and everything just to smooze him over, so he will invite her to tea so he can actually see her. And then on top of that, he has all those volumes of pictures of her, newspaper clippings and stuff, and it's wow, this guy is psycho.
And not only does he use Nick to get her to show up at his party, but there's the scene where he invites her to tea, and then doesn't, like, he's there, but when she shows up, he's gone?
Yeah, suddenly he's shy. Suddenly he's like, I don't want to do this now.
Well, I can understand because, I mean, it's been 5 years. But I also have to say this, that given the fact that it's purely coincidence that Nick Carraway happens to be the cousin of the woman that Gatsby is trying to go after, that is trying to get back into his life, happens to be the cousin, happens to live right next door. And then all of a sudden, it just happens to come together. Another problem I find with the story is that the fact that Daisy knows who Gatsby is. Apparently he knew the name Gatsby from way back when, from 5 years ago. Completely knows that he lives across the bay from where she lives, and yet knows about all the parties, and yet somehow decides not to go in there. And yet knows all about this, and then she says, Gatsby? What Gatsby? It's like, you know who Gatsby is because everyone's been talking about it!
You see, this leads to a theory that I came up with in terms of Gatsby and Daisy's relationship. Like, I'm going to assume that she did actually love him when they first started, like, dating. Like, again, you know, puppy love and all that. But when he left and then decided, oh, I'm not going to come back, but I'm sure you'll wait for me, like... And then she goes, she marries that guy, like, she fell out of love. And then she fell in love with her husband, as, you know, typically is. And...
That, or at least got comfortable in that life.
I mean, obviously we find out the guy's a douchebag because he cheats on her constantly, but...
And knows about it.
Right. But at the same time, you know, suddenly this guy who just, you know, up and abandoned her, like, comes back into her life and, like, expects her to, like, you know, come back to him. And I'm guessing like she must have, like, known once he, you know, reemerged and is thinking, oh, well, you know, he's spending all this time throwing parties but no time to see me. Fuck this guy. Cause, like, honestly, like, Daisy is, like, when you get down to it, a despicable person, just like every other rich person in this film.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, it's kind of understandable, given how Gatsby is. Because I mean, when we finally get back together, he expects her to just up until her husband, who she's been married to for what 5 years now, to just tell him, "Oh, I never loved you, and I'm going to run away with the guy who abandoned me back during the war." That's
one problem I actually found with that, is that why couldn't he just say, you know, I don't love you anymore, and just leave it at that. Not like I never loved you, because even from Daisy saying, you know, she had to have loved him at some point, even at the very beginning. So why couldn't she just say, oh, I don't love you anymore, I'm just going to dump you and just go. I mean, even on the merits of just, you know, knowing for the fact that she's cheating. But the one thing the movie fails to do is explain why she never, if she knew about it, why she doesn't divorce in the first place. And that's because she's Catholic, and Catholics don't believe, and at the time, Catholics don't believe in divorce. Which was a key thing in the book, and it's mentioned in the book, and I felt that hurt the movie, because it kind of hurts Daisy's character more, because it's like, oh, why does it, you know, it's a logic thing, why couldn't she just do this?
True, but then again, like I said, look at Gatsby and look what he's making her do. You know, he's basically telling her to abandon her husband and her daughter, which she has, by the way.
Yeah.
And instead of, like, just, like, he apparently expects her to start a whole new life with him, like, never seeing the guy or their kid ever again, but they're still staying in the same exact place, right across from her old house. And it's like, why?
And not to mention the fact that when he wants Daisy to say that she never loved Buchanan, he wants to be there, and he wants, you know, Nick and what's her name to be there as well.
Nick and Jordan.
Oh my god, I felt so...
I'm like, why would you do that not only to Daisy, but to the people who are supposed to be your friends?
Yeah, it's like...
Why would you put them in that situation?
It's like, let's put on a show, why don't we? I mean, never mind that this isn't a, like...
Oh, on his birthday, too.
Yeah! Oh my god, poor Nick. And we gotta talk about Nick. Like,
Nick, I will say this: Nick is the only likable character in the entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
He is, but he gets the shaft so hard. Like, that poor bastard. The only reason anything good happens to him is because Gatsby's trying to get into his cousin's pants. That's pretty much it when you get down to it. And the even sadder thing is, like, he's in love with Gatsby. Like, they never explicitly say it, and neither do they say it in the movie, but it is obvious he is head over heels in love with Gatsby. Just the way...
It's a bromance!
Yeah.
No, just, like, real romance. Like, I actually am convinced that Nick might actually be gay. Because, think about it, the only time you ever see him with women in the movie is when he's drunk out of his mind. And he would never drink.
Well, that's because he was kind of forced to be with women he only just met.
I know.
You know what? You know what's funny? Because in the book, I remember he started kind of having feelings for Jordan. In the book, like in the actual book, like he says, because he wanted to be with, like he wanted to, like, started to go with Jordan, started attending the parties with Jordan more. You know, that kind of thing. But but they decided not to go that route. But I do kind of see what you're saying, because even there is a line that they did take from the book that they use in the movie about describing Jordan, how with Nick it's the most terrifying woman he has ever met, and that's kind of like that could imply, you know, that could only intensify the fact that he has a homoerotic attraction to Gatsby, but that's up to interpretation.
Yeah. I mean, personally, from my point of view, I didn't quite see the homosexual part of him.
I mean, on that one.
And not having read the book, I was especially confused, you know, that they have him spending all this time with Jordan, and I'm kind of getting the feeling they have something going, but they're never really...
I know.
They never really explicitly say anything.
They never really establish it.
They never really do.
The book did it a lot better.
You see it sort of started. You see, he's starting to develop something, but they kind of just brush it off to the side when Gatsby's in the picture.
Because they want to focus more on Gatsby.
Yeah, she kind of disappears once Gatsby enters the picture. Like, you only see her, like, one or two other scenes, and she's just sitting in the background. And it's, like, it's awkward at times. It's like, why are you here?
She gives character development and gives exposition about Gatsby's past, and that's about it.
Even though Gatsby himself says the exposition, so really there's no point in her being there.
Yeah. No. She explains about Gatsby's connection with Daisy.
Not only that, we get exposition on Gatsby multiple times. The same exact story.
God. Oh, the dialogue is so repetitive. It is so fucking repetitive. Like, for instance, they will show a flashback of like a scene from Gatsby's past, and not even two scenes later, Gatsby will be like, "Oh, when I was little, I grew up in this town." It's like, why are you telling us? We just saw it. Don't waste our time.
Just tell us, you know. Oh, and then Gatsby told me about his past. That's all we need to hear. We've already heard it. Don't.
It goes back to what you were saying before. The movie doesn't know when to shut up.
Yeah.
Oh my god, there was so much padding in this movie, and you could tell just with the dialogue and the writing. It's just, it's like the writer just kept like zoning out. Like, he would write a sentence, zone out, and then he'd write the same exact sentence later. But, like, that is what, like, led to the worst part of the movie. Like, the second half, or at least the last third.
Yeah.
It was unbearable. Oh, my God.
It dragged itself on. Because then all of a sudden, you know, Daisy starts falling in love with Gatsby again. He, you know, they comes over his house. They do stuff. And... you know, and then it just goes on and on, just, you know, very slow pace, you know, just drags it out, and then it's like, all right, now we get to the scene where he finally confronts, where Daisy finally confronts her husband, and that sort of thing, and even that kind of got dragged out too. It's like, I'm just like, I don't remember it being dragged on this long in the book. It's like, get on with it.
Oh my God, like we were in a theater that was like the seats were amazing. Like, they were all plush, and they actually reclined all the way back.
Yes,
and I was like,
that was awesome.
it was so
I was
damn
reclined
comfortable.
back like the whole time. I'm just like,
Was it Starplex Cinema?
Yeah. However, once it got to that scene, my chair never felt so uncomfortable. I was like twisting and turning. I was getting antsy. I'm just like, please end. I need to get up. I need to walk around. I need some sort of mental stimulation. Please. And oh my god, it was just it was torture. Like, I almost felt like I was back watching Plan 9 from Outer Space. That's how much it freaking dragged. Because, like, it is very rare when I get antsy during a movie, and this is one of those times. Like, I'm honestly debating whether it is worse than Iron Man 3 or not, because how I look at it is that I went to Iron Man 3 with high expectations, and the movie completely ruined it. Whereas with Great Gatsby, I went in with no expectations, had them raised, and then dashed. So, at this point, I'm trying to decide which is worse.
I think Iron Man 3 is better. No. Correction. I think Iron Man 3 is worse than The Great Gatsby. Because with Iron Man 3, it's just all... There's a lot of plot holes. There was just a lot of stuff that just kind of made you mad. But... To me, with The Great Gatsby, also the fact that the characters, you have a main character who I disliked more than, say, John Gatsby, or Jay Gatsby, excuse me. But, I mean, at least with Great Gatsby, I mean, there was something to look at. With Iron Man 3, I mean, yeah, you had the Iron Man suit, but there were some things in there that just pissed you off. Like, why isn't he in the Iron Man suit? And Gatsby, it's like, it basically was... It was more true to its own source material than Iron Man 3 was. Especially when Iron Man 3 was talking about the Manchurian. And
Mandarin.
Even in the 1920s, I still fuck up.
You're drunk Tony Stark.
Anyway.
And it's gone.
But yeah, I mean, Great Gatsby is more loyal to its source material, and I think maybe that's why I enjoyed it more, because it's like, all right, I get it. I mean, it's more easier to me. I thought it was more easier to look at than, but I mean, the third act kind of fell apart, but I was at least interested in the first two acts of the movie anyway. So
definitely Iron Man 3 is worse. And thing is, they are both very similar in that their main character is rather unlikable, even though he's supposed to be. But I don't know. I didn't hate Great Gatsby. I mean, probably because I didn't read the book and had nothing to draw on, except that I did know that Gatsby was supposed to die. So actually that was one thing that was kind of ruining it for me, was when, after a certain time I'm like, okay, so I have to wait for him to die. I know he's going to die, so when is it going to happen? And they keep,
Exactly, they keep dragging
that out. And they keep, saying, oh, this was the last time I saw Gatsby. Gatsby wasn't here anymore, yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, yeah. By that point, I was kind of like you, and then I'm waiting for this to happen, and I'm like, when is it going to happen? How is it going to happen? Why is it going to happen?
This is the last time that Great Gatsby picked up a can of soda at this gas station. This is the last time that Great Gatsby parked his car right here for the night.
He rode into death.
This is the last time where he swam in that pool, and then when he was shot, he said, "Rosebud." I mean, I'm convinced that I know I'm going on a side note, but I'm convinced Leonardo DiCaprio wants to remake Citizen Kane so he can play Charles Foster Kane. I am convinced.
I believe it.
Because that's one other thing I will say about Leonardo DiCaprio's performance as Gatsby, is that it kind of has almost like that Charles Foster Kane, Orson Welles type performance. And I think maybe that's what he was going for, and in some ways it works, but it's almost like it makes it a little too obvious for like the more diehard moviegoers who've seen like Citizen Kane, and they're just like, and seeing him shot, and he's like, Daisy. I'm just like, Rosebud. And he falls right in the pool, so it's like really?
Yeah. And then, like, well, one thing that I noticed that they added in that wasn't in the book was the scene where Nick calls up Daisy and her husband, because apparently nobody is showing up to Gatsby's funeral because of the whole scandal.
Yeah.
And, like, you see them for a split second, like, looking up at the guy, and they're like... And I always wondered that in the book, and I'm like, wait, I always wondered, like, did Daisy, like, want to come, but, you know, her husband wouldn't let her, or did she attempt to come, but was thwarted or something, or did she just not want to come? And this makes it explicitly clear that she does not want anything further to do with him, leading me to believe that she pretty much, you know, never really loved him in the first place.
Well, part of me kind of believes that it's the media circus that kept them from coming, that kept Buchanan and Daisy from coming. Because I figure the paparazzi and the reporters would probably, you know, hound them, and something about them would, you know, be brought up. So it's, you know, there's that possibility, and then, you know, there's the possibility that they just didn't want that kind of attention.
I guess, but, like, they don't even talk to Nick on the phone to, like, explain why they're not coming. They're getting ready to go on vacation. They're just telling their server, like... And it's like, really? Like, you can't even give him, like, a condolence or something? I mean, it was his friend, despite the fact that the guy used him throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
And, like, nobody shows up. All those hundreds of people, nobody shows up. And, like, after the paparazzi had taken about 1,000 pictures of his corpse, they leave too. So, yeah, happy endings all around.
The Great American Tragedy.
Like, seriously, like, this, like, Great Gatsby is, like, a tragic romance, but it's really between Nick and Gatsby, not Daisy and Gatsby. Like, I really did not give a shit about Daisy and Gatsby, because, like, they had no chemistry. They really didn't. Like, Daisy looked so awkward and uncomfortable every time she was around him. Whereas opposed to, like, Nick and Gatsby were, like, you see Gatsby actually, like, let down his wall and, like, tell him this personal stuff. You see them, like, actually bonding. And I toward the ending, I'm, like, expecting, like, Nick to turn and be like, Gatsby, I love you. Oh, well. And now Nick has been driven insane and into a clinical depression because of his man crush.
Yes. At least he got to write a book about it. Bestseller.
But inaccurate title.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what else we could say about it. I pretty much had my go at how much I freaking hated this movie.
At the same time, as much as I didn't like the movie, I know there are some people, I know people who did, and that's because they read the book and they enjoyed it. And if they enjoyed reading the book, then obviously they're going to enjoy watching the movie. But if you're not a big fan of it, you're probably not going to like this. I mean, the only thing I will say about The Great Gatsby is that it's more like, it's more of a parallel of what happened during the 1920s. How it was all just one big party, everybody was along for the ride, and then all of a sudden...
The party ends.
You know, it crashes, you know, everything just goes away, and that's what happened, you know, in the crash of 1929. So in the end, I mean, that's kind of the only thing I can take away from Great Gatsby. It's like it's symbolism for what was going on during that time period. That's the only thing I could see it. Other than that, as far as like story development and character wise, not really getting it. Not really for me.
Nah, like, watch, like, the first half, or at least 2/3, but then after that, just shut off the film, because you're going to be bored out of your mind. And your final synopsis?
I didn't hate it. Like I said, I hadn't read the book, so I had nothing to draw from, except, so it was just me watching a movie, and I was kind of drawn into it. I mean, I do kind of feel for Gatsby, and I do find him to be a sympathetic character. Granted, his obsession is his undoing, but, you know, you can't help but feel bad for a guy who lost one thing that he really loved, and he's trying so hard to get it back, even though it crushes him. It destroys him. But, and while you say that he does use Nick, but I do feel that the two of them do connect eventually, and they do form a real friendship. So you do feel for these characters. As despicable as they may be, you do feel when they get hurt, when they are at their lowest. Mm-hmm. It's like they're not the worst of humanity. They're bad, but, you know, we all have our flaws.
I guess I can see it that way.
Yeah.
I still would not watch it again.
Yeah.
Neither would I.
Well, I guess we may as well wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
So until next time, I'm Cat Tea Critic.
I'm One Sat Morn.
And I'm Y2 Staller.
And I guess it'll be another 80, 100 years or so until we see the next new movie, since we're apparently stuck in this time period. Oh. Hello?
Catherine, is that you?
Scott? Where are you calling from?
I'm in the control room, aka your basement. I've been working on a new transportation device, but I think it went haywire. Shit! Crap! Must have mixed up the transportation device with the flux capacitor. You need to get back here, post haste!
Well, we would, but we're kind of stuck in the 1920s.
I'll handle it. I'm going to send you back here where you were last week.
Alright then. Beam us up, Scotty.
What run? What two? What three? Alright, you're being teleported.
Oh, and another thing about this movie, ORAC, they can't hit you over the head with homoeroticism any harder than they already did. And at this point, come on, Peter Parker, just go ahead and fuck him already. Alright, ORAC, I think it's only fair that I talk about Gatsby himself. Leo, awesome. Leo almost saved this movie. Almost. Eventually, we find out just who this Gatsby fellow is, and after that, the movie admittedly starts to fall apart. Right around the time that Daisy and Gatsby start to confess shit is when I stop caring. Seriously. This is supposed to be the better part of the book, and the better part of the story, and yet it completely dropped off. If there's one thing I'm allergic to, ORAC, it's dullness in the second act. Ugh. Only one thing can cure that. That's an old sandwich. That's a spleen. That's somebody's kitty that I stole. Aha! Here we go. After hearing all that, you want to see this movie, ORAC. Alright, ORAC, if you want to see it, I'm not going to stop you. But I'm not going to enable you. Wait until it comes out on Netflix. I didn't pay anything to see this movie, and I'm very grateful to Kat for that. But I still feel like I got ripped off. I was promised something Oscar-worthy. I was promised something that would finally get Leo a fucking Oscar. And that's not what I got. Okay, maybe Leo will get an Oscar for this, and it will be well-deserved, because his Gatsby is damn good. The rest of the movie, meh. ORAC, let me promise to show you good movies. Alright, Bug? I promise you, I'm going to show you good movies.
all alone, no chaperone can get our number. The world's in slumber, let's misbehave. There's something wild about you, child, that's so contagious. Let's be outrageous, let's misbehave.
That's what I'm going to refer to the out of place music. Fucked up my line. Do 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 do. Fucked up my line. Do 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 do. Fucked up my line. Do 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 do.